Greetings to all the students. I welcome you all in this discussion video of Anubhav 1 2025. So let's dive into the discussion of economy, Indian economy questions in Anubhav 1. Start with the first question of Indian economy. Question number 8. It says that based on the graphs given below, which of the following conclusions can be reasonably inferred regarding the Indian economy over the last 4 years? Okay, now go ahead. First, there has been consistent fiscal consolidation in the economy. You know, if we talk about the very basic aim of the fiscal consolidation, with the help of the fiscal consolidation, the government is trying to focus on fiscal deficit, or I would say reducing the fiscal deficit and the debt associated, right? So two purposes. If we go with this def, right? So go with, that this is the fiscal deficit. This is the fiscal deficit. It is continuously declining. So that means it serves the very basic purpose, right? So we can say statement 1 is definitely correct. Now let's move to statement 2. It says that the utilization of the borrowed resources has increasingly focused on productive investment. Talking about the productive investment. Now let's come on this part. See, this chart is majorly focused upon two things. The first is revenue deficit, right? Second is capital outlay. See, this is the capital outlay. We can, in a further, in other words, we can say that this capital outlay is all about the capital expenditure, right? That means the government is trying to work on the long-term investment. Got it? So if we move ahead, we can say that there has been a significant enhancement, or I would say increase in capital outlay and consistent reduction in revenue deficit, right? So if we only focus on two things, the capital expenditure part and the revenue deficit part, we can understand that the utilization of the borrowed resources has increasingly focused on productive investment. That means capital expenditure. Going with this thing, there has been continuously improvement in the capital expenditure, which says that yes, government has increasingly focused on productive investment, right? So that means statement 2 has to be correct. So based on those things, select the correct answers. The answer has to be 1 and 2 both. C should be the answer. Let's move ahead. Now, deep dive into the question number 9. Question number 9 says, which of the following best explains the consequences of consistently high credit deposit ratio? Consistently high credit deposit ratio. If I talk about the credit deposit ratio, it just on a very factual part, it reflects that it talks about the bank's ability to lend. Or for say, if I say the credit deposit ratio of a bank or a banking system is 75%. That means the bank has the capacity to lend 3/4 of its total sum of money, right? This is a very basic part. If I talk about the high part, the high credit deposit ratio, it talks about one very strong thing, that there has to be a strong demand for credit. There has to be a strong demand for credit, right? Why? Because we are talking about the high credit deposit ratio. Second, it even talk about the slower deposit growth rate. So based on this following assumptions, the rationale, we sought about that consequences, increased deposit mobilization by banks to balance credit flow, incorrect, goes against the very basics of the credit deposit ratio. Improved economic growth through sustained credit availability. C, increased liquidity risk and potential challenges in meeting withdrawal demands. Why? Because there is a strong demand for the credit, but at the simultaneous time, it even slower deposit growth rate is there as well. So slower deposit growth rate. Slower deposit growth rate. Right? going with these two objectives, we can say that yes, this should be the most appropriate answer of this question being asked. So answer has to be C. Move ahead with the next question, that is question number 10. Question number 10 talks about that consider the following statements in the context of long-term capital gain tax. Long-term capital gain tax. So if I talk about just simply part of long-term capital gain tax, for say the NAV of one of the bond at this moment is 10 rupee, or for say after a year or after 2 years it becomes 15. That means I can have the 5 rupee of interest or the income, right? This is basically talks about this long-term capital gain tax aspect. Now going ahead, goes about the statement 1. The provision of indexation reduces the taxable amount of LTCG, long-term capital gain tax. What is this indexation? If I go with the part of indexation, it is a technique that adjusts the, it is a technique, I would say, technique that adjusts the value of an asset for or with inflation. Right? This is the point about this indexation, right? So statement 1 says that provision of indexation reduces the taxable amount of LTCG. If I move ahead, we can say that this indexation can definitely bring down your long-term capital gain tax. How? Because it brings down the the taxable income. How it is? Let's move in a further example. For say, what is worth 100 today might be worth 120 or 130 in future after a year or after 2 years. That means the increasing price will ultimately reduces my purchasing capacity. Because earlier I was buying it for 100, now I have to buy it for 120 or 130 or good so, right? This part is talking about. So for say, provision of indexation reducing the taxable amount of LTCG. Yes, absolutely correct. Second, indexation adjusts the cost of acquisition of an asset to account for inflation. This is the very basic part we just talked about, right? Statement 2 is correct, and yes, inflation part is there, reduction is there. Statement answer has to be A. Why? Because this is the correct explanation of statement 1 as well. Move ahead with another question, that is question number 11. It says, which of the following measures can help in reducing India's dependence on US dollars? Okay, first, issuing rupee denominated international bonds. Yes, why? Because if you issue the rupee denominated international bonds, there will be a dependence or there will be a demand for it, which will ultimately lead that the more dependency upon the US dollars. Correct. Second, signing bilateral swap agreements with other countries. Now imagine India or any other X country will have this swap agreement. That means for the goods and the services they are exchanging with each other, they just need to pay in their own currency rather than the dollar. So it will boost the currency aspect as well, right? So statement 2 is definitely correct. 3, encouraging the opening of rupee accounts for non-residents, right? If I talk about this aspect with respect to the foreign country aspect, so it says that yes, ultimately will reflect that opening of the this rupee account for non-resident in the foreign country will definitely lead to the demand for the rupee, right? That means there will be a reduction for or against the dollars. That means statement 3 holds correct in that particular matter. So answer has to be, they are asking the correct answer has to be 1, 2 and 3. Let's move with another question, the question 12. Consider the following statements. Statement 1 says, a proposal in the GST Council can be approved if it is supported by all states regardless of the center's stance. Now understand, As per the GST Act 2016, there has been a provision that all the decisions taken by the council will minimum be taken by a majority of not less than 3/4 of the weighted votes of the members present at the moment. If we even count all the members part, I mean the member states, it will account to only 66%, 66.67% of the total weight. Of course, if the center's weight is not there in this particular aspect. So 66.6% is when all states. Right? So now going with this very basic part, we say the proposal in the GST Council can be approved. It is supported by all states regardless of the center stance. Hold incorrect. Why? Because it has to be approved with the 3/4 part, and even with 66.67% go against the rationale of 3/4 of the members present and voting. Statement 1 is incorrect. Statement 2. A combined weightage of votes for all states taken together is greater than the weightage of center's vote. Yes, 66.67%. It is greater than the center's weight. Statement 2 is correct. Now, which of the following is correct in respect to the above statement? 1 is incorrect. 1 is incorrect. Right? Statement 2 is correct. So, answer has to be D. Move further. Question number 13. The question number 13 says that which of the following hypothetical scenarios represent an inverted duty structure in the economy? Inverted duty structure, my dear friends, we a little bit aspect we talk about. Any of the time in any economy, for say the tax that is being imposed upon the finished good is lesser than the tax imposed upon the raw materials. This part or this situation is called inverted duty structure. For more explanation, for say the government of India imposes 10% taxes over the finished goods, or I would say over the tires, but it imposes 20% of the taxes upon the rubbers. This is this situation, that there is lesser tax on finished goods compared to the greater tax on raw materials. Right? So this is the part. So now with this rationale, move ahead. First, import duty or solar panels, that means finished goods, is lower than duty on raw material required to manufacture solar panel parts. 100% correct. Second, GST rate or raw cotton is higher than the GST rate on cotton garments. 100% correct. Third, this is correct. Why? Because GST, this cotton garment is the finished products. Third, imported duty on mobile phones is higher. Mobile phones is finished goods. Finished goods is higher than the duty on their components. Definitely goes against the very basic definition of inverted duty structure. 3 is incorrect. Select the correct answer. So the answer has to be 1 and 2. So C has to be the correct answer. Let's move ahead. Which of the following methods allows companies to raise capital by offering additional shares to the existing shareholders at a discounted price? So ultimately, now move forward. IPO is a very simple part. Whenever any of the country is trying to launch, right, IPO is being offered to the new customers, not the existing shareholders. Incorrect. Rights issue, preferential allotment, private placement. We talk about this preferential allotment. This talk about, or it is a strategy to giving the shares on a very preferential basis, but does not necessarily be given to the people who are the existing shareholder. Incorrect. Private placement, predetermined player, again not necessarily the existing shareholders. Right? Again correct. Answer has to be B. Now the thing that comes to my mind is, what is right issues? right? If I talk about the right issue, we can understand in this way that any of the time a cash strapped company need to lower down their debt burden, they again, you know, raise money via giving the shares to the existing shareholders with the date specific. Now this means even being given choice to the customers that shareholders can even buy new shares at a discount, even those discounted by the time of the expiration date. They may even resell their shares. This reselling of the shares in the market again will definitely dilute the prices of the shares. This is just an additional information with respect to the right issues. So for general, right issues is being published for the additional existing shareholders with the motto of trying to pay the debt burden. Next question, that is question number 54. It shows about that which of the following factors can impede the effectiveness of monetary policy transmission in India. So this monetary policy transmission, it is a policy, or I'd say it is a process with which the monetary policy decisions try to impact upon the economic growth and the inflation associated. This is the process of this monetary policy transmission. Now talk one by one. High level of non-performing assets in the banking sector, it will definitely lower the CRAR, right? So it has to be correct. It will definitely lead for the the betterment of the this impediment of the NPA or this monetary policy transmission. Second, higher interest rates on small saving schemes. Small saving schemes are the one who are providing the higher interest rate. Right? And this higher interest rate will ultimately make asking the banks to raise their deposit rates. This will definitely go against the very basic of monetary policy transmission. They will definitely impede it. So statement 2 will be correct. Third, external benchmark based lending rates for the banks. The external benchmark based lending rates for the bank, that means that the bank at this moment can decide the rates based on the 4 external factors. That means it can directly impact the borrower. It will definitely not impede the monetary policy transmission, rather it will support it. It has to be incorrect. So the correct answer to that will be 1 and 2. Correct answer 1 and 2. The answer should be A. Moving ahead with the reference to the regional rural banks, consider the following statements. Now again with regional rural banks, one photo is 50, 35, 15. Right? This is the ratio. That's the part. 50 is being central government. This is the sponsors. This is the respective state. This is the ratio of the corpus of money. The central government holds the largest share in the capital structure of the RRBs. Yes, 100% correct. Second, RRBs are exempted from maintaining CRR and SLR. Dear friends, RRBs are definitely exempted for maintaining the CRR, but they have to maintain the SLR accordingly. So based on this, statement 2 is definitely incorrect. 3, RRBs are mandated to allocate 75% of their total outstanding advances towards priority sector lending. Statement, yes, this is the correct part. How many of the statements even given are correct? 2 statements are correct. The answer has to be only 2. B will be the answer to it. Move ahead. Which of the following investment are included in the gross capital formation? If we talk about the gross capital formation, it means that some of all the additions that are being done with the fixed assets. And the fixed assets mean farm machinery fixed assets, post harvest infrastructure is the fixed assets, land improvements is the fixed assets, but agriculture R&D is definitely not the part of fixed asset. So now they are asking about the correct answer. 3 can be eliminated and we have this answer 1, 2 and 4. 1, 2 and 4. It will be 1, 2 and 4. B will be the answer. Again, we can solve these kind of questions if we have the basics in our mind. Now 57. Which of the following are the most likely economic impacts of the currency depreciation? If I talk about the currency depreciation, it means that a country's currency decreases against the value of an international currency. It usually happens under the floating exchange rate system, where the currency is determined with the supply and the demand in the forex market, right? This is very general part. Now first thing, they are asking about the likely impact. It increases the real burden of external debt denominated in foreign currencies. Yes, why? Because now the more units is being paid. Earlier I was paying 2 units, but now the currency's value has been depreciated. So now I need to pay 3.545 accordingly. Right? So statement 1 is correct. Second, it reduces the purchasing power of the domestic currency globally. Again, if you just move with this very basic part, again, you know that reduces the purchasing power. Earlier I was being able to buy one asset or one good in rupee 1. Now ultimately after the currency depreciation, I need to pay 2 rupee to buy the X good or service. This is that statement is talking about. Correct. It leads to a decline in the foreign remittance from overseas workers. Decline. Remittances is the amount of money that has been shared, or I would say sent back by the people to their home countries. So ultimately, if the rupee has been depreciated, right, or if with respect to the India, I would say, if the rupee has been depreciated, the foreign remittance in India will not decline, but rather there will be an increment. Right? Statement 3 is incorrect. Select the correct answers using the code give law. So it has to be 1 and 2. A has to be the answer associated. Move further. Question number 58. Which of the following policies can be employed to stimulate consumption and boost consumption-led growth? First, increasing income tax rate. If you increase the income tax rate, the people associated has to pay more, so the people will be living with lesser amount of money. So consumption-led growth will not take place. Why? Because now I have the lesser amount of money. Right? So this ultimately is wrong. Second, subsidizing capital intensive industries. If I subsidize the capital industry, this capital intensive industry, in near future, it might definitely, boost the production activity, but directly it will definitely not have any link with the consumption led growth. Incorrect. Expanding government welfare programs. Yes, if you expand the government welfare program, for say the government is giving me the cash, money or something, or for say with respect to the subsidies or with respect to the UBI that was there. So government will pay me money, I will have the money. That means I may repay the money, or I may work, or I may utilize that money based on my own choices. Correct. Encouraging savings. If any government promote the savings, it will definitely, the people will tend to save more than rather to spend the money. So this is definitely not correct with respect to the consumption led growth aspect. Right? So select the correct answer. As per this discussion, only 3 has to be there. B should be the answer. Moving ahead, 59. Increase in inflation expectations, increase in fiscal deficit of the government, purchase of government bonds by the RBI under open market operations, interest rate cut by the United States Federal Reserve. How many of the above factors will most likely lead to an increase in the yield of government bond? That means bond yield. So bond yield is basically is the return that the investor can expect with respect to the bond. Bond yield and the bond price have an inverse relationship. That means if the bond prices will go up, the bond yield will go down. Right? The very simple aspect. Now go ahead. Increase in the inflation expectations. That means this will definitely lead to a situation that I might be thinking that the real return upon the bonds will definitely be reduced. So the prices of the bonds will reduce because there is a lesser demand. That will definitely lead to the higher bond yield. One is correct. Second, increase in the fiscal deficit of the government. If the increase in the fiscal deficit of the government, that means the government will borrow more from the market. Right? The government will borrow more from the market. If the government will borrow more from the market, the government will definitely supply bonds. So the increase of bond supplies will be there. The increase of bond supplies will lead to the situation that the demand will be lesser, supply will be higher. So the prices will go down of the bond prices. And if the prices of the bond prices, the prices of the bonds are higher, that means it will definitely increase the bond yield. Correct. Third, purchase of government bonds by the RBI under open market operations. Now understand. It will be a situation that the government, or I would say the purchase of government bonds by the RBI under open market operations. If the RBI will purchase government bonds, right, it will definitely lower, or I would say the prices of the bonds will go up. And if the prices of the bonds will go up, it will definitely lead to a situation that the increase in the bond yield will not take place. Incorrect. Fourth, interest rate cut by the United States Federal Reserve. If there will be an interest rate cut by the United States Federal Reserve, that means it will reduce the yield of the US bond. It will ultimately give a weightage to the Indian bonds prices in the market. So now again, when there will be a demand for the Indian bonds, so the prices for the Indian bonds will go up because of the demand only. It will definitely counter the yield of the bond. Not correct. So how many of the above factors will most likely to increase? Only 1 and 2. Only 2 has to be there. Let's move to another question, that is question number 97. Country A has a lower nominal gross domestic product. Nominal means that the GDP without adjustment for the inflation. Simple, right? Nominal means without inflation. Right? I say that it has a lower. Okay. Then country B, but its GDP at the purchasing power parity is higher. So if I talk about the GDP at the PPP level, this means that the GDP accounts for the more price differences across the countries, right? More price differences. Across the countries. Right? Now, this is a very simple understanding that we can derive from these two statements. Now, which of the following provides a likely explanation for this? First, the overall cost of goods and services in a country A. Country A, we have the lower nominal GDP is higher than that of country B. No, it has to be the lower. And because of it will be lower, the people will have a more right, or they will be purchasing more goods and services. Why? Because the prices will be lower. Statement 1 is definitely incorrect. Coming to 2. Country's A currency is significantly overvalued compared to a country's B currency. But now if it is overvalued, it has to have a high nominal GDP. If it is overvalued compared to the other countries. What? In his say the country's A currency is significantly overvalued, but in question it say that it has a lower nominal GDP compared to countries B. Again, it goes against the principle. Incorrect. Select the correct answers. Their answer has to be not neither one nor two. Let's move to another question. That means Union Budget 2024-25 has proposed transit-oriented development plans for large cities. Which of the following are the key principles of the transit-oriented development? Again, with the smaller part, that the transit-oriented development model that has been proposed in 2024-2025 has two aims. The first is they are focusing on the effective land uses. Second, they are having the effective transport planning. So land uses and transport planning, just to make a sustainable urban growth centers. Right? Now, high density development around the transit hubs. Yes, correct. Second, separation of residential and commercial zones to reduce congestion. If we separate these things, and the ultimately object is to develop the sustainable urban growth centers, it will definitely go against the principles. Why so I say? Because it will increase the travel expenses, and the people will have to use the cars or the vehicles more, right? So sustainable urban development model will not take place. Separation is definitely go against the very basic definition of TOD. Third, decentralization of urban centers to promote low density urban growth. If I say TOD are trying to produce the high density, not the low density, sir, urban growth model, right? So we go with this thing part. If I go according to it part, right? Those low density urban growth is contrary to TOD's very basic objective of minimizing or commuting the distances. So it is definitely incorrect. Goes with this thing. Select the correct answers using the code given below. So only one has to be there. A will be the answer. So students, this is all with this video. I hope that the level of the economic questions that the next IAS team has made was very much significant, and you people must have tried your best. Keep on revising, keep on brushing a lot of your basics associated with the economy. All the best, keep studying.